Hi, everyone. Hope everybody can hear me through this mic. Let me see. It seems to be working. Well, good evening. My name is Joe Padilla. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Grace Alliance, and this is Grace Live. Grace Live is a 30-minute interactive Q&A webinar and to provide more support for those of you facilitating the mental health support groups, the Family Grace Group, or the Living Grace Group, which is a mental health support group for those families and individuals that are experiencing a mental health difficulty or disorder, and also for anybody who's interested in facilitating mental health support groups within your church or community. So this webinar topic that we're going to be doing tonight is basically off our Family Grace Group. So that basically kind of reviewing curriculum, the group, and other questions you might have. So we're going to get into a lot of Q&A this evening. So now, for those of you that are joining on on our Zoom platform, there's a Q&A button that you'll see at the bottom. You'll be able to click that button and then be able to provide different questions that you have related to the group and things like that. So this is going to be a very interactive. I want to be able to provide you the support that you need for your group. And so tonight we're focused on the Family Grace Group. So just to get started, for those of you tuning in, what questions do you have about the Family Grace Group? You're leading the group or you're interested in starting the group. What questions do you have about the curriculum? What questions do you have about the group model or even troubleshooting your group? So just go ahead and type in your questions and I'll be able to respond to those questions as we get going into our little program here. So as you guys are writing questions or thinking about some questions and you want to look at get some support on those, what I want to just basically help you understand why the Family Grace Group is important. Why do we do a group like this, and why is it necessary? Now, for myself, I'm a family member. I've walked alongside my wife in her mental health journey and her incredible mental health recovery process, and she's doing fabulous today. So, but I remember those early years, going through the mental health care system, trying to navigate that, and even from our church and faith perspective, not finding a lot of support and understanding. And then even when we looked at some of the community support, there was a lot of faith aspects there that were lacking as well. So we found ourselves kind of in this basic need of understanding, how do we navigate this? How do we understand this? And even how does our faith journey apply to this? So with the Family Grace Group, why is because there's a need for families. And when we say families, we're talking about parents, we're talking about spouses, or even siblings who are in this journey, who are needing some support from a faith journey and trying to figure this out from a mental health understanding as well. So when you look at research, when there's research on the mental health, the interplay with the church, that you find that families and individuals that are experiencing mental health difficulty or disorder, they're experiencing twice as many stressors as the average congregant in the church. And however, they feel oftentimes disconnected from a lot of support, even from the church, and they find themselves very discouraged. And a lot of people end up leaving the church because of it. Now, part of this is that some research shows that over 60% of pastors hardly or never talk about mental health from the front. But when you look at from what the families are wanting, over 60% of families want their pastor to talk about it. Now, we've worked with a lot of churches and church leaders, and I often find that the pastoral leaders really do care. Again, a lot of the issue for them is that they've never received proper education or even training, so they don't know how to talk about it, and they don't know how to provide a lot of support. And we work with a lot of churches and church leaders, and I love working with them because we can show them answers and we can show them solutions of how to navigate this. However, trying to just wait for the church leaders to get on board with all the education and training, there's still this need. And the need is this: community support. It's very important for that. So there's three things I want to relay with having good community support. So the first one is this: it's the language to understand. People need that understanding of, what am I going through? What's my experience as a family member, as a spouse, as a parent, as a sibling? What's my experience that I'm going through this? Then the other aspect of this is, what's my loved one's experience? How do I understand what they're dealing with, what they're going through, what their journey looks like, and get language for that? The second thing is having a faith dialogue and discovery, understanding God's grace, the process of his heart, and where does faith fit into this whole journey. We need to kind of go beyond just, hey, we live in a broken world, there's sin, we need to trust God, there's a faith issue to this, and sometimes it's just a weak faith, we need to work harder with our faith, or there's just a lot of demonic or the spiritual warfare type things. We can go beyond that conversation, not to negate that, however, but go beyond that and look at what is God's abounding grace in this process. Where is the comfort? Where is the rest? Where is the hope? Where is the joy as well? And then thirdly, practical tools. Practical tools that help us as family members, or even in the individual. How do we improve our well-being? What do we need for this journey? As we understand our experience, then we understand what we need and what we can personally improve for our well-being. And then how do we improve our relationship with our loved one? How does that work? And then even improve, how does it support my loved one in their own mental health recovery? How do I empower them in that process? So that's why the Family Grace Group, it was put together to really provide that education, that understanding, that faith concept, and a lot of those practical tools so that we can navigate this journey in the community support. So, all right, so let me look at some questions here that are coming in. And then as you have questions, please, you guys as well, write in your questions. All right, so hold on one second. Let me just give me a second to read this. Okay, so it's a great question that's coming in. That basically saying we're looking at starting a group and thinking about the family group and the Living Grace group. So which one do we start? Do we start both, or do we just start one? And I would say to that is that basically that in that situation, you want to just work with what you're able to do, who you have in the process of support. If you've got capable people that are ready and willing and as far as starting both groups, then you can go, I would say you can go for that. We see many churches and people start both groups at the same time because they have enough support that's needed as far as facilitators. If you've got the facilitators, they're willing, and the church is on board, then go ahead and start both of them. But we also see some churches that want to be a little bit more slower in the process, and they sometimes just start with the Family Grace group because there's typically sometimes there's a bigger need there, and we see a lot of that in that process. And then sometimes that just builds into starting the Living Grace group. Other churches will sometimes start with the peer group, which is the Living Grace group, and then that sometimes builds into the family group. So it really, you can kind of take it as where your church is, what your church is willing to do, and if you have the facilitators to do that. Okay, here's another question. I've been dealing with from a particularly liking hope. This can cause entire group to lose hope. Okay, so this is a great question, and this comes up all the time. When you're facilitating a Family Grace group, there are individuals who have been in the journey for quite some time. It's been years even, and they're and having that hope is very difficult. And so sometimes that they'll come to the group, and so they're so discouraged that it kind of may rub off on others and feel start to discourage the others. And how do you address this when you're responding to someone to have hope? And I really think that in that situation, there's kind of a couple of things. I think it's not. I think that there's the place where the group provides just that ongoing community support. They're being there, saying encouraging things like that. However, maybe taking some time outside of the group and just not trying to counsel or try to provide extra pastoral. It's just really taking some time just to listen to the individual and to let them share some of the things that they're going through. And that's just providing that personal friendship, not extra pastoral care in the sense of overwhelming you as a leader, but just some extra time, just sit down, have coffee so that they can feel validated in their journey a little bit. And maybe you're doing that as well. However, when somebody is that discouraged and that low, you can suggest and encourage them to go and get professional support. Just because as a family member they're going through this journey doesn't mean that they don't need mental health support as well. In fact, I know for myself, when I was going through my own journey in my wife's condition, I went to go see a counselor, and I even took medication for myself, because a lot of family members, because of the distressing situation, they themselves have compassion fatigue or secondary trauma, and that would lead them into what's called situational depression, where they themselves will be so discouraged and develop depressive type symptoms, anxiety, and so forth. And so it's okay if the family member is at that place, and to get that kind of support, we actually encourage that in that process. So maybe just look at some creative things like that. Okay. All right, so this is a person who's been trained in the Stevens ministry, and asking, have we worked with groups with that background, and they have a lot of training within that as well. There are a lot of people that actually are involved in the groups that have been trained in that ministry as well. And I think that just provides extra training and extra support within leading a group like this. So I think that there are people that are involved with that ministry and can be a part of this ministry as well. So and if you do have that background, it's just extra training and extra support that would be very, very helpful. So again, just any other questions that you guys have, please type in other things that you feel like that you're trying to troubleshoot, or something about the group, or you're wanting to start a group. All right, so here's another couple of other questions. Okay, so this is a great question. That if you've been, there are many groups that are doing the Family Grace Group, and they've done it multiple times. We actually have some groups that have been together for 4 to 5 years as a Family Grace Group, and sometimes there are new people, and sometimes there are not. So when you're kind of continually going through the curriculum, it's going through a couple of times or even 3 times is great, because a lot of times people in the beginning, they're not doing well. It's been a hard time, and as they go through the group, they get that healing and that support that they need, and they get better and better as they go through the group. And even sometimes the second time through the group, they find extra encouragement, and they see things from a different angle. Now, what I have seen other groups do is that they've been together and there aren't any more new people that are coming in. What they'll do is they'll maybe take on another curriculum or another workbook. You can even explore doing. There's another mental health support group that's called Fresh Hope, and we have a great relationship with those guys. You can consider doing their workbook and seeing how that goes for your group. It's just an extra material. Or you can take on some other topics that would be helpful, or a Bible study, or something that would help everybody to continue to grow together. And we always say, encourage people to stay on a curriculum basis or some topical curriculum. And the reason for that is because if you remove the curriculum, or if you remove topics, that can get the group to kind of more get into what's called co-rumination, and they just keep talking about the pain over and over and things like that, and that actually can make things a little bit worse, and that kind of gets into the venting group and things like that. So I think as you move on, look at different topics. I know some groups also sometimes bring in a professional, and they ask, hey, would you meet with us as a professional so we can ask you questions? And then other groups, I know with one family group I was involved with, they asked to have a peer come and visit their group who has had a significant mental health recovery, and just share their journey and just ask questions with the group. So be creative with your group to provide the answers or discovery and learning for the group. Okay, let me see here. Family support. Many questions come up regarding where they turn to what. I'm not sure I understand this question, but I think it's just, as this might be kind of related to resources where can they turn for extra support and things like that. And I think that's where you can look at what are the local community resources that are available. And I think that would be setting up a great partnership and relationship with NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, because they do have some great programs that work great in partnership with our curriculum and our groups, even within a church setting. So that would be a resource to ask those guys. So, and again, just other questions that you guys have about the church, about the groups, or even some other troubleshooting things, go ahead and type those in. So now, while you're thinking about some other questions here, why is it so important for the church to be supportive in this? Why is it so necessary? And there's a great story that out of Irving, Texas, Irving Bible Church. And this is really kind of neat. That gives the basis for this. And when they were first starting, they had a group of people together. They had a mental health seminar and workshop. And so when they were having that, the pastor of the church came and basically came to give a greeting to the class. Now you have to understand that Irving Bible Church is a very large church. I think they have up to 20,000 members in this church community. And so the pastoral staff is obviously very full and it can be very busy. However, the senior pastor made it a point to come and visit this mental health workshop or seminar that they were having. And he just gave a simple 30-second greeting of, we're thankful that you guys are here. We want this kind of support. We love you guys. We're in this for you. And after he just gave that 30-second greeting, the rooms gave him a standing ovation. And what that says is that the need is so real, and people are feeling the need to be validated in their journey. And just a simple thing like that basically says you're empowered into this church, and that this church is a safe place to be, and basically reinforcing that Jesus is a safe place to be. And so just those little things like that from a church can be really, really important. So one of the things is, what are the things that you guys are seeing as helpful to get the church support happening in the church? How are you seeing the pastors? And maybe you can share some comments on that of what's working in the church, and maybe I can read some of those comments as well. So here's another one, another question here. Okay, so the question here is, can a family grace group include caregivers with developmental disabilities, not just mental illness? And I would say yes and amen. I think if there's no other specific support, the topics in the curriculum are going to cover the basis of their own personal journey as well. And some of the ideas there they can translate it to their loved one and their individual situation. So I don't think it's a limit. But however, I know that there are other support groups that can be very helpful for those specific needs. So if they have nowhere else to go, then I would say yes, come and join us and be a part of the community, and let this material and the curriculum help guide them through that process. So any other questions that you guys are having? Any troubleshooting questions that you guys are coming up with within the group, or any support that's needed? I'm here for you guys, so we want to help you navigate this journey. So, and again, so we want to see that the church is providing a loving place and support for individuals, and so again, the reason for this is because the church can be a place to allow people to be in that healing journey and to be in that process to restore hope and get through and not only restore for themselves, but also restore with their loved one. And one of these stories is where there was a a married couple, and she basically was in a very difficult situation with her husband. There were some dynamic things that happened, and they had to actually separate. She came to the group, the Family Grace group, and very distraught and very discouraged. A lot of that hopelessness type feeling. Now she was actually seeing another counselor on the outside because of how devastating her situation was. But what I noticed as the group went on week by week, she started to get a little bit better, and the community was gathering around with her, and she was getting a lot out of the material and the curriculum. But what was really neat, that after that situation, and by the end of the group materials, and at the end of the group, she was doing so much better emotionally and with herself, and had now even started dating her husband again and starting to restore that relationship. And later on, they ended up getting back together and restoring the relationship. But it was neat because she had a place in a community in the church to be able to gather around her in that community support. So it's really beautiful. And what that's saying is there's a place of healing and recovery that can happen. And when we say recovery, mental health recovery, it's different for each person. For some people, it could be a longer journey, and some can be shorter. But it's really about the processing and growing through that. Okay, so let's look at some other questions here. Okay, so do you have groups that meet every other week or weekly? It really depends on you. Most of the groups that meet are meeting weekly. However, we do have other groups that decide to meet every other week, and it's just because of time and location of where the event is. So it's really up to you and the group and what they would like to do. I know that when we first kind of started the groups, we were doing every other week just because of time and schedule for everybody. But as we were getting going, we found that everybody wanted it weekly, and so we kind of moved to a weekly schedule. Now the other thing too is, remember that the curriculum for the group is a 16-week curriculum. So we just encourage to basically, you can go through 8 weeks at a time, take a break, and then do the other 8 weeks, so that you can do them by semester. So 8 weeks in the fall, 8 weeks in the spring, and just kind of space it out that way. Or however, you can be as creative as you want to be, doing it weekly or every other week. Okay, so a question here. Okay, basically that we're advocating, that Grace Alliance advocates Bible-based counseling, which is very different from psychological counseling. How does this work? How can I learn to train my team in Bible-based counseling? Okay, so big conversation here. Okay, I think that we basically we like to support a faith-based process. Now, there are different types of counseling and therapy models. So I think that we always first start and encourage people to look into a cognitive behavioral therapy model, which is a very strong tools, evidence-based process. Because a lot of times that in the biblical counseling, individuals that are first in kind of dealing with a lot of distress, they're not emotionally stable. The brain is not in a stable process to process emotions and thoughts in a kind of structured way. And a lot of times when they get thrown into the counseling first, it can actually be quite triggering for them. So by going into a kind of more of a CBT model, and even if it's faith-based, that's quite helpful for them, so that they're learning tools to regulate their thoughts and their mood. And then as they get better, then they can kind of enter into that kind of counseling process, because they have the tools to regulate thoughts, moods, and the response to that process. So I think that you just have to understand where individuals are in their journey. And so when in our materials, we do follow a strong kind of more on a CBT principle-based therapeutic process, where it's not therapy, but we follow those principles, and then providing the faith-based process within that. So I think that the biblical counseling is something that can be helpful and very good for those individuals. However, you just have to look and kind of evaluate where those individuals are, if they can process on that level. If not, CBT and then counseling, and see how that goes. All right, so another question here. Okay, so how do you successfully pass this on to another leader that you want them to have the same passion and heart that you do? The reason for passing it on is they have, you have a lot of responsibilities, and it wouldn't be 100% because we would still be part of the process. And if possible, I think I think that, when you're recruiting and getting other leaders, that we always look for heart, and then how that heart expresses itself, whether it's, really a lot of passion, or, they're just kind of in that journey and they're still learning and growing and things like that. But I think it's their heart and their willingness to serve, and then you grow with them, because they, I think that you may have learned so much through this process. You might be 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road, and you're at that strong advocacy level, and they might be just beginning or putting the pieces together. And it's really kind of working with them and going through that process, and just kind of helping them along the way. And then really, as when you're working with other leaders and getting them into facilitating, allowing them to make mistakes, and then working with them to see how they're learning as they're growing through their own experience. Because we can't necessarily reproduce ourselves, our passion in them. We want to help grow them up and empower them into what's in their heart, what they want to be doing with the group, and the different skills that they have, and just help them to grow into learning how to do their groups. And so, and again, that helps with different expressions and different things within that process. So. Again, just that hopefully that's helpful. If there's if you have any other questions, please just write those in. But I think that as far as starting a group, and that with this process that we're making it easy for you guys. And one of the things is that on our website we have the Grace Academy. And basically, we have removed every barrier of training cost and things like that, so people can easily learn and be supported through this process. And if you go to our website and go to the Grace Academy, there's free leaders manuals, the free leaders guides, and then a free videos, an e-course that you can go through and watch the videos and be refreshed as a leader yourself, kind of get the information again and get the support you need. Or if you've got other leaders that you're wanting to train and get into the process, then you can take them through the videos as well, and let them learn and grow into this. And so we're making it easy by removing that huge cost on the training, and really the only cost is just purchasing the workbooks that your group needs for that. So there's another question here. Okay, that I think that this is great testimony here, that this particular couple, that they lead the groups, and now they're at a place where they're serving within the church, overseeing other groups, and we're being able to educate the other pastors and their other team members, which is excellent. And that's just a neat momentum of starting something and seeing how it grows, and then you're able to influence and bring change to others. So if this is a 16-week course, what do we do to support the families between course offerings? Yeah, I think that during that time, really that we want to be able to give the support facilitators of these groups time to rest. One of the things that as you go through these groups, that there's a lot of challenges within families, and that's just a lot to ask for to try to be at this group meeting and lead this group 365 days, or but 52 weeks out of the year, every week leading a group. There's time that the group needs to be able to take a break and rest and know that they're going to come back together. So, but to how do you keep that community while you're together, while you're apart? What some groups do is that they communicate by email. I know with groups that I've led here locally, when we take a break, that sometimes the members get together. They'll have a meal together, and what's really beautiful is to see the community that comes together within these groups, and because you're facilitating a community support, you're not trying to be the pastor or the leader, and the group kind of pastors each other, and they go through this process. So so during that time, they a lot of times they'll stay together and communicate by email. They'll have meals together, and they'll get together outside of that. It's very low key and very relaxed, and that's the beauty about having the relationship that's through that. But sometimes other times that they all just kind of take a break and then they all come back together. And really, we've not seen a problem with that. I think it's kind of been great, and especially because of the way it's designed. A lot of groups are happening in the fall and in the spring, so that it gives them enough time to take a break for their holidays and things like that. And then if some individuals are really having a hard time during the holidays, they keep that link and that connection with each other. So anyways, so we are done with our time here as far as our scheduled time. And again, please know that there are resources on our website that you can look at as well as far as the blogs. There's other videos and other things that we've put up there. And again, we're going to be doing this monthly. But I'll stay online here if there's anybody else has any other questions. But I'll just go ahead and end our time for this. If you need to go, and for those that are joining us on Facebook, we'll be ending. But again, I'll stay online to answer any other questions that come in.